based in Australia, in New South Wales, and I've got a PowerPoint presentation that I'll share with you in a moment. So I was hoping to go through the PowerPoint with you all to help you understand stages of a relationship, overcoming disappointments in your relationship, and understanding a little bit about our family of origins and how that can impact our relationship also. So I was hoping that you could, if anyone had any questions, that we could do a little Q&A at the end of the presentation. And then, if you've got like paper and pen with you, maybe jot down some questions that you might have along the way. And then hopefully we can go over those at the end of the presentation. In my slides, I do share with you like some graphs. So if you wanted copies of those graphs, I'd be happy to email them to you, or you can do a screenshot or something. I'm happy for you to use the information that you learn here today. If you want to acknowledge where you got the information from, also, that would be really, really greatly appreciated. All right, so we're happy to start and get into it. I will just share my PowerPoint. All right. Can everyone see the screen? Yeah, wonderful. So I work full-time in private practice. My business is called the Counselling, Mediation and Relationship Centre. And today's webinar, I called it Beyond Love. So let's just get started and get into it. So when we think about a child or a close friend or someone special, the word love comes to mind. And sometimes there's that roller coaster ride of mixed emotions, emotions like joy and hope and excitement, trust or security. And we dive into these friendships, we have romantic relationships, and even get married with the big belief that everything will be okay and we'll just be able to figure it all out. And values set in, such as respect, communication, intimacy, and these are just standards of having a healthy relationship. In Australia alone, I did a little research. There's around 112,000 couples take the big plunge of doing the I do decision, and they stand before God and their families and hope that, take a vow that their love will be eternal, happily ever after, and nothing will dim their glow on their love. But here's the data. Every year, about 50,000 couples decide to swap their I do's to I don't in a dramatic twist in their love story. So that's right. The divorce rate has now gone from 1 in 3 couples ending into divorce to 1 in 2. So when I work with couples, I generally, straight up in my session, I always ask, well, what do you want? And a plan A is to go back and repair those bumps in the road and hopefully build some new communication tools where both parties feel heard and respected. And I always say, well, you kind of got to get to 100 years old together. But sometimes that's not to be. And we talk about a plan B, and that's to separate amicably. Because if there's children, you've got to be at their birthday parties and concerts and graduations. And then there's all that stuff you've accumulated together, along with extended family and the same friends. But generally what happens is we go with C. And that word amicable is easier said than done. And we end up fighting and fighting and fighting. And then we're off to the lawyers, giving them between $50,000 and $100,000 each to hopefully let them figure that out. So quickly, a raise of hands. How many of you have ever had a disagreement with your partner? I'm sure we could all raise our hands. So in the world that we live in, potentially every conversation could end up in a full-scale debate. And it's remembering how to navigate those tricky conversations, along with having a little laughter and a lot of patience along the way. So I'd like to introduce to you my relationship chart, because who knew that there was 10 stages of a relationship? And none of this stuff ever gets taught at school. And we're just supposed to figure it out by perhaps seeing how our parents handled their relationships. And, if that wasn't a healthy experience, then, we're trying to navigate through life with no tools. So the very first stage on this relationship chart is called unconditional love. And this is where you're out somewhere and you might notice someone, and your heart might skip a beat for a little moment and you just become curious about that person, like, oh, I wonder who they are. And then from there, you may exchange phone numbers. And the right hand side of this chart is the positive side of the chart, and the left hand side is the negative side of the chart. So from that, number one, the unconditional love, we go into the second stage, and that's called primal gazing. And this is where you've exchanged phone numbers, and it's a getting to know one another stage. And if you have a look, next to that stage is that yellow box, and it says stop and explore all possibilities. And this is so crucial to do this, but no one really knows that we need to do this, because along with this getting to know one another stage comes up with everyone's personal family of origin experiences, and ways that they've dealt with disappointment in the past. And so two people come together, and sex is amazing. And at this stage, I always say this is where you've got your best foot forward, because you like that person and you want them to like you back, and they like you and they want you to like them back. And so we're showing the best side of ourselves. And after a while, we go into stage three, and it's called completion and commitment. And this is like we go, well, hey, what do we do with this love? And this is where we take on that third entity, where we might buy a home, move in together, buy a dog, have a baby, or get married. Uh, and it is about making that commitment to one another, where you think this is a special gift that we have, everything's so wonderful, and we're going to take it to the next stage. And that those first three steps is at the first stage of your relationship. And then we come to that orange box, and it's called that first hint of disappointment. And you can see it's on both sides of the chart. And this is where there's that little something happens, and I call it swallowing a sour grape. There's just something that might have been said unintentionally, and there's a little bit of a disappointment starts to rise. And it's very, very crucial at this stage to be able to resolve any types of disappointment. So if I give you some little analogies or some examples where one person might say, I should be home at 6 o'clock for dinner. And the other partner is getting dinner ready, and 6 o'clock comes and 6:30, and they walk in at 7. And at that stage, you're like, but you say nothing. You're like a little bit of disappointment there. I call it swallowing a sour grape, but we let it go. We'll just, say nothing. And so what we've done is we've taken ourselves over to the negative side of the chart on that first hint of disappointment, and time will pass. And then there might be another hint of disappointment, like you might plan to do something over a weekend, and Friday night comes, and the friends ring and all work calls, and the partner says, can we put off our plans because of I need to go to work, or my friends want to go motorbike riding or something. And might go, oh, yeah, sure, that's okay. And again, another little sour grape of disappointment that you swallowed. So then what we've done is we've taken ourselves, we're on the negative side of the chart now, and we've gone into stage 5, and it's called betrayal, where we've started to swallow all those sour grapes of disappointment. We haven't shared our truth. So we've betrayed ourselves from not speaking our truth. And we're starting to get that belly full of sour grapes. And then the partner might, I don't know, cook the barbecue or cook the breakfast, and he burns a toast or burns a steak. Then up from nowhere, up comes all those sour grapes of disappointment. And it's, look at the mess you made. You know I don't like it like that. And then the partner's thinking, but she's a psycho. Whatever happened? Because nothing was said before. And then from there we go into six, and it's called the false illusion. And this is where stage 4 and 5 have not been addressed. And you might hear the old-fashioned saying, he goes to golf, she goes to bingo, or he loves the dog, she loves the cat, and we start to just to separate what was once like this has just started to do that. And you can see there's a little brick wall has just started to build between you both. So I don't know, you might ask yourself in your relationships, have you ever gone to bed with that invisible line down the middle of the bed? And it's like, don't you dare put your foot over my side. And, there's that bitterness, anger, resentment, backbiting. That's all starting to go on between you both. But then some time will slide, and I don't know, you might feel like a cuddle or something, and you come together, might have sex, and you go, oh no, everything will be okay. But then nothing changes. And then we go here into the rotten, stinking bog. This is number 7 on that negative side. This is where we're in this relationship. The relationship has lost all its magic. It's become stale. And there's emotions such as anger, lack of trust, betrayal, disappointment. And you might notice these couples. I like to look around the room, particularly if I go to a restaurant, and you can see the couples who are in primal gazing. They're holding hands, they're looking into each other's eyes like no one else is in the room. And then you see the couples who are in the rotten, stinking bog. And this is where they're scrolling their phones, they're not even engaging in any conversation with each other. And if anything, they're probably even grunting at each other. Um, and so then it's the decision, do I stay or do I go? And this is the couples that I see. This is where they live 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and they're swirling round and round and round and round. So, uh, 8 is separation. This is where the trust is totally gone. There's no energy worth giving to this relationship. You feel empty and sucked dry. So when we learn to call our number 4 on this relationship chart, and I call it calling my 4, and that's how I educate it with my clients, it's being able to share a disappointment where you feel heard and respected. And when you have that ability to do that, your relationship goes down to 9, happiness. That's where you've been able to resolve things, or you might have to agree to disagree on some things. There's been some balance restored in your relationship. And then we can go to 10. And this is where it's called bliss or happiness. And it's gone to a deeper level. And the satisfaction or fulfillment and trust and love has all been restored. And this is not the best foot forward love. This is where it's a deeper relationship where you've had issues, you've been able to resolve them, and you still love each other. So that's the goal. So here's the tools to communicate. And it's, like I said, I call it calling my 4, and this is how we do it. So I'll just go to the next slide. And it's really, really important that when we do this, that we come from a genuine place of sincereness on wanting to resolve whatever the disappointment might be. So the way that we do it is you take each other by the hands, and it's really important to do every step of this process. And you say what they did, how it made you feel, because everything in life is a feeling. I feel happy, I feel sad, I feel angry. and then what you'd like in return. Because I always say with every problem, there is a solution. And then you check for hearing. Have you heard me? Or what did you hear me say? Quite often, when I'm working with couples, when one party is speaking, the other person is thinking of their comeback line. So they're not really listening. They're like, well, what about when you did this? And what about that? But we're not really listening to what each other is saying. So if I go with that first analogy, late home for dinner, so you take the your partner by the hands and you'd say, when you said you'd be home at 6 o'clock for dinner and you came in at 7, I felt a little disappointed because I had dinner ready and now it's gone cold or whatever the situation might have been. And so, what's going to work better for me is the next time you're going to be late, the courtesy of a text message or a phone call. Have you heard me? Or what did you hear me say? And you get the client to repeat back what you've said, or your partner to repeat back what you've said. Because quite often I do this exercise in my sessions, and I might say to the other party, so what did she say? And they say something completely different. I'm like, but that's not even the words that she said. So the message, how did that land on the other person? Or what are they reading into it? So it's really, really important to educate the clients on really listening to each other at this stage by checking, what did you hear me say or have you heard me? And you get that commitment from there. So along with every disappointment, like I said, we don't learn these tools at school. This is emotional intelligence. And when I first learned how to do this, I thought, oh, who really speaks like this? It kind of sounds a little bit, I don't know, simple. Until I had a big fight with my husband, and I was able to resolve some things, and I got to hear his perspective on things, and he got to hear my perspective. And it's really important when we are calling our four that we wait, that we are calmed down. So on this slide here, I've got a picture of the brain, and in the green zone, that's our neocortex. That's rational planning, thinking, organizing. And then we have that red section called the limbic system, and that's our emotional brain. And I don't know if you've ever seen the video called Flipping Your Lid, and it talks about when you flip your lid or something's made you really angry, logic's out the window and everyone just sees the limbic system, which is your emotional brain. So I always say it's never wise to try and call your fall from a place of anger. So it's having those strategies that if something's escalated some emotion in you, that you wait till you calm down, you go for a walk or you take some big deep breaths, or you might say, hey, let's just put this on hold, but we revisit this conversation tomorrow. And you make sure that you do go back, because in the green zone, when you're in the front part of the brain, everything's turned on, you're connected, your heart rate is settled, compared to when you're in the red zone. This is where you avoid eye contact, your heart is racing, so your body isn't in a place to be able to resolve things. And this is where people quite often react versus responding. All right. So when I work with couples, I always say, it is about keeping it alive and healthy, because we've all got 24 hours in a day. And, there's a thing called family time where we come together with our children or extended families, friends. And then there's a thing called couple time where it's just used to no kids, no phones, no interruptions. And it's where being able to have those deeper conversations. And then everyone needs alone time. And sometimes in our alone time, that's what fills our cup, where we might enjoy a bubble bath or read a book or go to the gym, whatever it is, pat the dog. And we're trying to manage all that in our busy worlds that we live in and work, um, to make it happen. And when I work with my couples, I always say, "Do you have any couple time?" And they're like, "Well, what's that?" And it might be a date night, or going for a drive, but some time for each other to spend and have those deeper conversations. So on the chart here, it's like turning off your phones, apologize if you make a mistake, thinking highly of each other, being each other's best friend. Because Albert Einstein, I love this quote. He always says insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and wanting a different result. And also, when I work with my couples at the very beginning of the session, I will always say to them, and I get that commitment, will you do absolutely whatever it takes to make this relationship work? And I've learned to say that because, I'd see a couple, they'd go away, they'll come back the next week and, did you practice calling your four? Did you do this? Did you do that? And they go, oh no. And, they're doing the same thing over and over again, but wanting a different result. And I always say, I can't come home with you, but you can take on this knowledge and tools, but it's up to you both to implement the changes because you can't change the other person and they can't change you. But with a new awareness, you can change yourself. So that brings me to the next slide on epigenetics. I'm not sure if any of you have heard about epigenetics, and it's really important to understand our family of origin because how this also plays out into your relationship. So the bottom where it says you, we have a mum and we have a dad, and our dad has parents and our mum has parents, and those parents, they will, we have grandparents and great grandparents. So what comes down through the generations is not just your eye color, skin color, height, and build, but a thing called cellular memory or epigenetics. And on there, in that chart that I've got there, there's a book called The Heart's Code by Paul Pearsall, and this is where epigenetics started to become unfolded. And there's many, many stories, and in there's one particular story about a young girl who received a heart transplant. And after a while, she started to have a repetitive dream that she was beaten and left in a drain to die. And so she tells her mum, the mum tells the doctor, and the doctor says, look, it's probably nothing, but I'll check it out. And that's exactly where the heart come from the other little girl. She was assaulted and left in a drain to die. And in this girl's dream, she says it's an uncle, I don't know, let's say Ben, okay, an Uncle Ben. And when they explore, this other little girl has an Uncle Ben. So on a hunch, the police rock up to Uncle Ben's house and he confesses to the whole thing. And there's many, many, many stories in there where people have received a new heart and they never liked beer or motorbikes, and now they're finding themselves drinking beer and, exploring motorbikes. So from that, they took a cell from someone's body and they put it in a petri dish and put it under a microscope. And they showed the person images of happy, sad, angry, and they watched this little cell change shape. So they took the person away, 3Ks away, 3,000 Ks away, and the same thing happened. So not just through like organ donation, but through the cells of our body and what comes down through our generations. And, so from that, other studies were done. And this is where they took a mouse and at the same time of feeding a mouse a cherry or smelling a sweet cherry, they gave the mouse an electric shock. So every time the mouse smelt cherries, it would flinch. And then that mouse had a baby. And when that mouse smelt a cherry, it would flinch. And then the grandbaby mouse, they did the same experiment too. They gave that little grand mouse, I don't know what to call it, to smell the cherry, and it would also flinch. So this is where memories get passed down through our generations. And it's really, really important to be able to have that awareness of what is passed down through the generations or the generations before us, what issues that may have been that might have played out. So in my sessions, I always explore that as well. And sometimes some concerns might be anxiety. So, say mum suffers from anxiety and the client's got anxiety, and oh, yeah, grandmother, she had anxiety as well, or alcoholism and other traits, or anger outbursts. And it's really, really interesting because I always think, well, are we who we are because of our DNA or through our, nature versus nurture? Is it our environment that makes us who we are? And, with my studies and research, they've come up that it's about 50-50. And it's really, really important for my clients to be able to understand, what the relationship, what did that little boy or girl learn about love growing up? What did they see? What is their DNA? So when I was doing my training, one of my trainers would say, when you change, your family will change. And I used to think, well, what does that mean? Like, why do I have to change? I'm not doing it. It's my children, it's my husband, it's not me, it's all of them. And he would say, but when you change, they will change. And he likened it. He used the analogy of when you lay the baby down on the mat and you put all those little toys over the top, and with their hands and their feet, they're touching all the little toys. And as they touch one toy, all the other toys start to move. And it's the same thing when we change. What we will notice that our family will change. So that's the way we think, the way we speak, where we go, what we do. And when we change ourselves, our world will change. So I just have a picture up there. A couple of years back through COVID, I wrote a book called More Than Just a Hairdresser. In my previous career, I was a hairdresser. And the book is about what I know now as a therapist that I wished I had known as a hairdresser. And it's all about, and in the book, it has a companion workbook, and there is a modified version of that relationship chart for the workplace. So, how to share a disappointment in the workplace. So, with that, you probably wouldn't hold your colleagues' hands, but there is a structure on how to be able to share disappointments in the workplace so that you're not on that negative side of the chart and, do I leave and find another job, to be able to resolve conflict. Um, so my books are available from my website. And if you have any questions or you want to know more about anything that was spoke about today, I've got my email address there as well. So I'll just stop sharing the screen. So that's just a little bit on how to share a disappointment with one another by understanding the stages of a relationship, and how to call our four, and understanding why are we the way we are, and what has come from our family of origins, and with that awareness, bringing in the changes that's going to lead to more positive outcomes. So this is where I'll open it up to you all. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have or any feedback. Does anyone have any questions? I can't.
Can I just ask, what was the name of the book? That was really fascinating.
The
Having it
Heart's
remembering.
Code by Paul Pearsall.
Okay, thank you.
There's many, many, many stories in that book, and about the and it's not just a heart transplant either. Memories can come through other transplants, so like kidney transplants. Uh, the heart is a big one, and yeah, so that is a true story about that little girl. It's in that book, The Heart's Code. All right.
Um, oh,
Yeah.
can I ask a question? Hi. Um, I'm not a couples counselor, but I sometimes, or couples coach, but sometimes I coach him and her separately. And what I notice is that they're what each other is thinking is very different from each other. Would you
Absolutely.
just recommend that I just bring them in for a session and like
So the way
together
that
and
I Yeah, the way that I structure my sessions is I always say if I see them separately straight up, I just think they're not on the same page. Do they even live in the same house? Because they tell me such completely different stories. So I like to bring them in together first to be able to hear each other's concerns in their relationship. And I'll do a little bit of education on, I get them to call their four in their session and I show them the relationship chart. And if I find that in their family of origin that there is childhood trauma or concerns that they might need further work on, then I'll invite them to come in individually and then we bring them back together. Because I always say it's really hard to work on a relationship with just one person.
Hmm.
So I encourage to see them together and then break off into individual sessions if needed.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for that.
I used to do it the way that you were saying, see them individually, then come together. But I've kind of done the opposite now. I just think I like get to the core quicker by seeing them together straight away.
Yeah, what happens is one signs up and then goes, "Oh, my partner could really help," because they both want each other to change, right?
Yes,
But what the reality is that the only person that you can change is you. So,
absolutely.
and them understanding that, you know, I guess from the get-go. So they kind of like one comes along a bit later on. So yeah. So that's probably so I will call them in earlier together, I think, when
Yeah.
that's the case. That's a good
Well, you
idea.
can trial it and see if it works for you. Like I said,
Yeah.
I see them together straight up because you can uh, like hit a lot of things on the head in the first session
Yeah.
by hearing each other's concerns. And I do get a family. I do a genogram, so I do get a family of origin history with
Yeah.
them and start to pinpoint, what their relationship was like with their in their families. How did they see mum and dad resolve disappointment? Did they scream and yell at each other, or did we do the non-talking thing? Because that's how most people are taught. So we say, well, we've got a problem here, but we're going to scream and yell, or we won't speak. But it doesn't fix the problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it is being able to resolve things. And, on some issues, you might have to just agree to disagree. If you can't find that, I can see the way you think. My husband and I, we would always have the same issue that we could never agree on. So it was with our children in teenage years on were they allowed to go to that party or they're not allowed to go to that party. And it was like, I felt he was a bit too strict and he thought I was too lenient. The kids have all grown up, 20s, 30s, and it's like, well, they're kind of well-adjusted people. And I was like, is it because they did go or because they didn't go? Who knows? But we just
Who
had to
knows?
agree to disagree. It wasn't worth, because everyone wants to be right, and they do this right
Yes.
and righteous. But, it's just about being able to resolve and understand that we have differences of opinion, but we don't need to fight about it. That's his
Yeah,
opinion,
that's true.
it's my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, thanks. Thanks for today. It was really good.
Thank you. Is there any other questions? I'm happy for you to just
D
call out because
Donna,
I can't see everyone. Yep.
one quick question. The statistic of one in two marriages end up in divorce is in Australia, right?
I
Or
looked it up
your
for
statistic
Australia.
is worldwide?
I think it's worldwide. There are some countries where the divorce rate isn't as high. And I don't know if it's from different cultures of we put up and shut up, that kind of belief. Or they are truly, truly happy and are able to resolve things. So I'm not quite sure. It's not global, but it's the divorce rate one in two and in divorce is um, it's not just Australia.
Hmm. Okay, and there's Paul here saying 43% divorce rate in Australia for first marriage. Interesting.
Yeah,
Thank you so much. Thank you. It was very insightful. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
thank you. Does anyone else have any questions or anything you would want me to expand on?
If no one else wants to jump in, Donna, it's Tara. I've got one just about, I mean, this is focused a lot on your area of expertise in terms of the couple relationship. What out of what you've said, or perhaps what you haven't said to us yet, could we take into, where people are having difficulties with other members of the family or someone at work in a relationship that they feel is really impacting them?
Yeah, so again, it would be understanding. I don't know if you've heard of the circle of control. It's you can find images out on Google. It's like a fried egg. So where the egg yolk is, the inner circle is what's inside your control. So what's inside your control is you, the way you think, the way you speak, where you go, what you do. And let's say the egg white, the outer circle, is what's outside your control, which is what other people do, what other people say, where they go, what they do. And so I always say when I get in a state of bother, I always say, well, what's inside my control right now, and what can I do about it? So if it's with something going on at the workplace, there is again a similar process of being able to share a disappointment because no one likes the word confrontation. And there is another communication tool, and it's called a carefrontation, which I'll explain to you here. A carefrontation is the ability to have a tricky conversation and keep the relationship intact. And it's probably useful for extended family members or colleagues. And the process behind it is if you imagine, let's go with Mary's constantly late to work and you're the manager of an organization. So the way that you do a carefrontation is you imagine that Mary's here on a zero. So if you come in and try to address she's always late for work, you're taking her down -1, -2, -3. So with a carefrontation, what we do is we kind of elevate her up and then come in with what she's doing. And when you do that, you're bringing it back down to a zero. So you might say, Mary, I really admire how you get in and you get the job done. You're so focused on your work, and it's great. And then you make a genuine request. And I've noticed that you're constantly coming to work late. So what's going to work better for me is that you, I don't know, set your timer a bit earlier and you make a really conscious effort of getting to work on time. Can we make this new agreement here today? So what you've done with Mary, you've gone, I really admire how you get in and get the job done. You're pumping her up. And then when you've come in with the negative, well, you're addressing the concern, is you brought her back down and she's still on a zero. So she's not left with disappointment. And so then, in a month's time, Mary starts to come to work late again. You could say, hey, Mary, do you remember a month ago we had that conversation? And then whatever needs to happen because of that. So that's another communication tool, a carefrontation. It's a little bit different to calling your four, but it's another way of being able to address concerns. And I think it's really good to be able to do that in the workplace or perhaps with extended family. Does that answer things, Tara?
Sorry, Donna, I found my mute button. Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much.
Donna,
Yep.
hi, it's Paul here. Can I raise 2 points very openly? One of them, in terms of the work you do and maybe others within this forum, pre-marriage preparation regarding two things, communications and expectations, and then how it actually changes after the I do's, that those expectations appear to have changed dramatically And then it comes into play that the chart goes all pear-shaped and everything. Would you like to comment, or anyone else like to comment on those two things?
So, pre-marriage, it would be education on that
Mm.
relationship chart.
Hmm.
And then I also do a lot of work with values. So you're starting a new beginning, and what value do you want that placed on that new beginning? How do you want to communicate? What is this relationship based on? What's the foundation? What are some things you'd like to change? And so there are also some things that we address, and it's getting that commitment that we've started off, because I always say that the values are like when you build a house and the builder digs out the trenches and puts down the foundations, and then you put the house on the foundations. That keeps it strong and tall. If you just build a house on the ground, it's going to fall over. So the values are also really, really important, because then when you hit those bumps in the road, whether they're not committing to what you agreed on, then it needs to be addressed.
Hmm. Thank you.
Did anyone else want to comment? With
Donna,
values, yeah, sorry.
no, you're right. Keep going. Just when you're ready, there is a question in the chat. I'll read it out to you.
All right, yep, you can read it out.
Okay, sure. So Rebecca's just asked, how long do you usually see couples for? Do you find 1 hour sessions long enough? How long do you normally work with them in terms of weeks, months?
So when I see couples, I always say there is no one hit wonder. It's not like you can come in once and now we're healed. It kind of doesn't work like that. So I get them to commit to 4 to 6 sessions, which are either weekly or fortnightly. I don't like to leave too much time in between sessions, because I find they're learning something new. So generally weekly for the first 3 sessions, and then 4 to 6 sessions I see. And then some couples, because I book out quite a bit in advance, so I always say, look, it's better to have the sessions and then cancel them if you don't need them than to try and get them. So we've got that commitment straight up as well. And the sessions go for an hour and a half. And then we just let it unfold. And sometimes, after 4 sessions, that may be enough. And then some other people, they want to do further sessions. I'm also a mediator, so a family dispute resolution practitioner. So for the couples who do separate, and sometimes counseling is a little bit too late, or I've had clients use a session to break up. And so then I do education on what's needed to separate, parenting plan, property settlement. It's really tricky when one party wants to a plan A and the other party wants a plan B, and that's to separate. So sometimes I might say to them, why don't you try plan A with counseling? And then if it doesn't work, when you separate, you've left no stone left unturned. So yeah, it's a process. Any other questions? Um, you can just start talking if you want.
Can I just say, you were just saying about values. What do you talk about when you talk about values with your couples?
So I have a chart that I get my clients to think about some values, and if they were to Google, personal values, and there's like, I don't know, 5,000.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
And so some values that are important to them in a relationship. So they might say things like honesty and trust and respect and commitment and loyalty. So they'll say things like that. And then I've got a chart where we put our values in a particular box. So your new beginning, what value do you want that based on? And they might say, well, mutual respect. And then the next box is about your relationship. What value do you want that based on? And they might say, well, I want that based on trust. You know, I've got your back, you've got my back. And then the next chart is communication. What value, how do you want to communicate? And you might do that with wisdom. And then there's the foundation. What do you want this relationship to be based on? And you might call it unconditional love, or you want it based on the truth. Um, there's a box called change. What are some things that you'd like to change? And you know, people who have come in for relationship counseling, they might want to change romance, more fun, you know, more travel, or you know, to implement some things to change. And then we look at other areas on being abundant and how do you want to complete this relationship? Is it with gratitude or being an abundant in integrity? Really being able to walk your talk kind of thing. So that's a specific training that I do with my couples. So for you, you could get them to identify 10 values, and I get my clients to do it individually, like as a homework task, and then and not show each other. And then they bring their values to the next session, and we see how many are similar. And the ones that are similar are the ones that we keep. And then we pick out, well, which ones do we want in each of those boxes. And they might have values that are similar, like caring and compassion. And they're similar. So I might get the client to share, well, what does caring mean to you? Or what does compassion mean to you? And then they go, oh, I think I like that one better. Or yeah, I like the wording in that. So we get to go a little bit deeper on what do those actual values mean, because they can mean different things for different people. Even the same word, respect, yeah, what might mean for me might be different to what it means for somebody else. So it's really, really digging deeper on what those values mean, and then where do they fit? How, you know, do we want that in the way that we communicate together? Do we want that in the way that this relationship is based on? Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Hi, I'm Maria, and I have a question that, at work and even in personal relationships, there are people in the yellow zone who are, not very conscious. They're frozen, and, you have to have a difficult conversation with them, for example. It can be for on a personal or professional ground. So, do you have some strategy in mind that, you work with them in a way that you can have a difficult conversation with them, especially when they are not responsive?
Well, this is where you could try that carefrontation strategy, where you kind of get them on side, like, you know, what I love about you is, or what I admire about you, what I respect about you is, and you start your conversation like that, and you really, you know, compliment them on what they're doing well, and then uh, then gently introduce the area of concern that you have with them. Uh, you know, and then there's consequences if they're not following through with, you know, you get paid to do a job. If you're not doing the job, well, you know, there might be some consequences. I remember working with one guy, and I don't know, the boss said something to him, and so he punched his boss in the eye and he broke his eye socket and he got fired. He got sent, he had to go to court, and the court made him come to counseling. So he came to counseling, and in the session, he was like, that was such a silly, dumb thing to do. So he fully owned it. But, you know, at that moment, he was in his reptilian brain and he reacted extremely poorly, which cost him a fine, and it cost him his job, and it cost him relationships. And but in the session, he was back in his front part of the brain, and he recognized that, that he shouldn't have behaved like that. So it was education on managing his emotions, so like anger management, and being able to regulate himself properly. So people in the reptilian brain, they're very reactive, and they're quite hard to deal with. But if they're willing to want to make changes in the workplace, that's the starting point. So it might be addressing things like that, or having a conversation with them around, how could you do that differently? Or, put yourself in my shoes. So I'm not quite sure what this person's doing, but do any of those strategies help?
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to know your perspective. It's awesome. Thank you.
Any other questions? I'm just reading the chat there, and I've noticed someone's put up the divorce rate in other countries. Yeah. So yeah, some are higher, some are lower.
I think there was one more question in the chat, Donna, around hypnotherapy. Do you use hypnotherapy in your sessions at all with couples, or could you maybe think how it could be incorporated if someone wanted to?
I think it would be a really great thing to do. I have studied a little bit of hypnotherapy, but it's not an area that I am promoting in my business. And I have referred clients to hypnotherapy. I think it's a great modality to be able to change belief systems or negative belief systems, particularly, in relationships, how that might impact. And if, quite often clients that come in, they tell me they're not good enough, they're not skinny enough, they're not pretty enough, they're not fast enough, they're not smart enough, they're not something enough. And, where we try to put the pieces of the jigsaw together of where did they get that belief from, and it generally comes from family of origin or messages from childhood. And depending on how ingrained those messages are, I do believe that the hypnotherapy would be perfect to be able to, change those beliefs that people have about themselves. So personally, I don't do it in the sessions.
Can I ask, do you use timeline therapy to deal with some of the family of origins?
Yes, I love timeline therapy, and I find that
Excellent.
it's so quick and easy to do, in a first session sometimes, and it really is a. I love the modality. I also do other modalities, EMDR therapy, particularly for trauma. So when you work with trauma for someone, it's you're working from the body up. So trauma is trapped in the body. I don't know if you book the book by Bessel van der Kolk, The Body Keeps a Score. So sometimes talk therapy isn't enough. So I do a lot of timeline therapy and EMDR therapy.
Thanks. I love timeline therapy too.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Hey Donna, this is Shivani. I just love what you're saying, and thanks for the that system of just saying the the chart, the relationship chart. But you just said something now, and you said you do timeline therapy in one session. And how do you do that in one session?
Yeah.
In the first session, in a session, so I generally gather a lot of information, and depending, so this is not specific to relationship counseling, but more individual counseling. So say my clients come in with workplace bullying or something like that. Then we might go into, like at the end of the session, doing some timeline therapy to let go of that negative emotion. So I can get to the core really quickly, just from listening to my clients' language, the words they use, and picking up on that. I can really, and I think it just comes with experience, like get to the core and start to see if they're willing to. I don't do timeline therapy in the first session for everybody, but there are some where it's a bit more like if they're just there for like one issue, then I can do that in the first session. Does that answer?
I can't put it in my mind how you would do that because like we normally would do like, so you just do the one negative emotion.
Yes.
Oh, okay. So you just release that one negative emotion.
Yeah. Yes, for that one session. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Someone just put, how long is your session? I'm not sure if you're meaning this session today, but generally, if it's my counseling sessions, they go from an hour to an hour and a half. Also, someone also has put in the session that the divorce rates is only what's reported. And I think that's it's so good to remember that also because there's a lot of cases that aren't reported, a lot of people who separate that aren't married, and the dynamics of those rates, that could be even like another different statistic.
Yeah, Donna, I put that in. I look at the statistics and I'm so into all the statistics about divorce rate and abuse and violence and all that because that's my main work. But especially like when there's domestic abuse, they don't put that in. Like I look at my real life experience in India when I went and visited and I stayed with my ex-husband there at that time. And I saw that people were living as couples, they as husband and wife, and they were like living separate lives, one in this house, one in this house, and they don't have anything to do with each other. And they do not report it that we're divorced because it's an absolute shame. And I know I've been made aware this happens in Asian countries as well. And there are parts of in America, people do that too. So the statistics, I wouldn't go with them because there's more people divorced and living a divorced life than what's actually reported in Australia. Yeah, it's a little bit more closer, but people just, how do you know? Because there's de facto relationships and
I
then
know.
they leave.
And that's what I was saying before. Like, are they truly happy or are they just not reporting? Are they doing unhappily ever after?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And, for financial reasons, a lot of couples separate under one roof and they can still access their payment benefits by living under one roof. Now, you don't have to live in two separate homes. I just finished a training, and this is just a little bit off the track, but it goes with relationships as well, or communication, that the biggest issue at the moment is cutting off people. So children cutting off their parents, parents cutting off their children. And, instead of trying to fix things or repair, when I work with couples, I always say, well, like in 5 years' time, he's your father. And in 10 years' time, he's still your father. That's not going to change. What would it be like to have a better relationship with him? Do you think it's possible that you could resolve things? What would be the first step? So, I'm doing all those ones with a client. But with this new training, it's just like, and they were talking about, they went into a restaurant. This was in America, and there was a sticker, and it says, may the bridges that you burn be the light that shines you forward. So it's like you're promoting cutting off. And don't get me wrong, I fully agree with boundaries and being able to respect things, but I think they've taken it to the next level where the biggest cause or the biggest issue, well, this is mainly in America, was loneliness and depression because of loneliness. And it's also the biggest time in everyone's life where we just cut off people. And so it's like, what's happened to communication tools or strategies or to try and repair things or misunderstandings or, like it seems to be gone out the window. I just found that was an interesting fact at the moment.
And that sparks me to think of, when people are dismissive avoidant or fearful avoidant, and what do you do with that? Because they're setting so high boundaries, and then the other anxious attached style just can't deal with it. And what's your approach to that?
Yeah. So I would look at their attachment styles and again with awareness of understanding that might be their attachment style and understanding the other person's attachment style and to work with that, by asking questions, so what do you need at that time, whether it's at a disappointment or what does the other person need or what's going to work better for you, and the couples talking to each other because quite often
やるこ
you
と
know
増えてさ、いっぱいいっぱいになってんじゃなかったの？
yeah, I don't know, did you hear that or was that just on my end?
Somebody accidentally.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so it is understanding and with awareness seeing what changes need to happen around those attachment styles.
Have you seen people actually move away to have secure attachment styles after that? I mean, of course, they're going to have to want it. Yeah.
Yes, that's right. And it's getting that commitment. Like I said, when I work with couples straight up at the beginning of the session, I always say, will you do absolutely whatever it takes to make this work? And, like I said, you can't change the other person, but you can work on yourself.
Okay. So we've been going over an hour. Donna, I wanted to thank you so much for your time, the information you shared with us. And there'll probably be more questions. So we'll put your contact information on the replay of the video. Any one of you can feel free to contact Donna if you have more questions. Donna, thank you again so much for your time and the very useful information you shared with us.
Thank you, everybody. So whether you're a coach or a therapist or a client, or I'm really hoping that this information can give you a better understanding on why we are the way we are, the communication tools that we've had or been handed down to us, and maybe some new strategies or new tools moving forward. So thank you so much, everyone, for listening, and best wishes with everyone moving forward.
Great. Thank you so much, Donna. So everyone, I just want to announce next month, I'm excited as we will be having Rafael Barrito. Rafa is a Spaniard living in Vietnam. He will be joining us live on the 16th of April, 10 a.m. Sydney time. His topic is going to focus on how Rafa works with NLP to build success across contexts, particularly high impact communications. He works globally. A quote from Rafa: "I'm like you, a person curious about the different things around me. You're here in this situation of yours, both personal and professional, because you deserve it, and you deserve it for all the decisions you made, unconsciously or consciously, throughout your life. I have a plan for you so that those decisions will lead you back to the situation you want, the one you truly deserve." So we look forward to seeing Rafa next month, and more information will be coming. Again, thank you everyone for your time. Thank you, to Donna, and enjoy the rest of your morning, afternoon, and evening.
Candice,
Yes.
does the replay get sent to us automatically?
I'm sorry?
Does the replay of the video, because I missed the first 20 minutes because I was still with a client, does the replay get sent to us automatically via email?
Yes, we'll send everyone an email, and it's going to be posted on our YouTube channel. Give us a day,
Amazing.
and you'll see the entire video replayed via our YouTube channel.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Everybody, thank you.
See you later.